Welcome to the Logger and Listings podcast, where real estate investors, experts, and entrepreneurs come together to share their stories and insights. Hosted by Kurt Warner, an entrepreneur and investor specializing in commercial and residential income properties. This podcast is the perfect mix of honest, insightful, and sometimes funny discussions on the world of real estate investing and entrepreneurship. So grab a drink, sit back, and get ready to learn from the pros on Logger and Listings. I'm your host, Kurt Warner, and this week we have the distinct pleasure of having Scott Meyers on, somebody I've known for several years, have a lot of personal respect for and admiration for, so it's a pleasure to have him on the show. Scott and his affiliated companies focus on the acquisition, development, and syndication of self-storage facilities nationwide. He currently owns and operates over 2.4 million square feet in over 14,000 units nationwide. His education organization, selfstorageinvesting.com, provides courses, tools, live events, and mentoring to help others launch their own self-storage business to enjoy the lifestyle, as he has coined, free from tenants, toilets, and trash. His various companies fund and build 4 to 6 houses each year in Mexico by taking his family, staff, and clients on an all-expense-paid short-term mission trip. Scott, welcome to Logger and Listings.
Kurt, so good to see you again and catch up, and glad to be here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on. So I know all about your story, and I've heard it a few times, but for our audience, can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, it was interesting, Kurt. I was just, as I was getting ready for another call this morning, I recognized that it is 2023, and I got involved in real estate in 93. So this marks about my 30th year investing in real estate, and got into self-storage in 2005. And so I've been in self-storage now for 18 years. And so I guess I'm officially joined the OG club, whatever that means, but I suppose I can't fight it anymore. But that's all right. We've learned a lot over the years, and self-awareness is a good thing as a business owner and as an individual. And started our career in 93 by buying a single family house, learned from Carlton Sheets. That definitely does date me. He is one of the original, the OGs, the gurus in real estate, by buying a single family house and then refinancing it, renting it out, and then moving on to the next. And so the Burr method, before it was the Burr method, as Bigger Pockets and other folks called it. And so I just continued to do that. Met my wife along the way, and she began working on the houses with me. We were truly a mom and papa business until one Sunday afternoon she said, either you fire me or I quit, because I'm not spending my weekends doing this any longer. So that's when we decided that, economies of scale will kind of fix this so that we don't have to be, involved in the day-to-day, and doing some of the rehabs and handling the tenant stuff. So we got into apartments, and really all that did, Kurt, was just kind of magnify things, until you get to that place, as any investor knows, kind of that the critical mass, and you have that economies of scale of a number of units. We had property managers and property management companies, but there was still so much that we had to do in the business. And we just didn't have that, all the free time and the cash flow that, Carlton Sheets talked about when I originally got back into the business. So we didn't want to get out of real estate. And we looked around the landscape to see, what else in real estate can we invest in, and what direction can we take that doesn't involve tenants, toilets, and trash, and all the hassles that goes along with that. And really, it's only self-storage and parking lots or parking garages, and that's it. And you can't really build a lot of value in parking lots or parking garages. I know you can for some folks out there that are investing in them, but not like self-storage or even multifamily, where you can add in all these ancillary income streams and rent, increase rents on a regular basis. And so, the more I looked into the industry and the asset class, the more excited I got, especially when I found out that, we don't go through evictions. We don't go to small claims court and deal with habitational real estate laws here in the U.S. And that is because it is industrial, and it is people's stuff in a warehouse, and it falls under lien law. So if somebody doesn't pay us, then we put a lock on their unit, and they can't get their stuff out until they pay us. And if they don't pay us after 90 days or 60 days in some states, then we sell their stuff off and we get our money back anyways. So that alone, and then the fact that, when they move out, either they move out on their own, or if we have to go to an auction, either way, I take a blower, my managers take a blower, and they blow out the unit, and they wipe down the back of the door, and, spray a little grease on the springs, and that's it. That's the extent of our turn. It takes about 5 minutes compared to all of the carpet and drywall and repairs and maintenance and HVAC systems and everything else in a house or in an apartment. And so we saw the light. bought our first self-storage facility with a partner. And then after that, that was it. That was our springboard to go off and then do it on our own. And our lenders were on board with us doing it on our own. And so we sold all our houses and all our apartments and then grew our storage portfolio to what you just had mentioned, and to the numbers of where we are right now in 13 states, and continuing to grow. And we got into development and then also private equity. And really, Kurt, these days, I mean, I more consider ourselves a financial services company. You know, we take in private equity and we deploy it, and we invest in self-storage facilities, and then we manage them. We're now vertically integrated. We're starting a management company, so we're managing our own. And then every 4 or 5 years, we either sell some off, or we take a look at the portfolio and decide what we collectively and our investors want to do, and we just navigate and move the money and the assets around. And so that's the long-winded answer to your question as to how we got where we are today. So the 30 years in about 3 minutes. How's that?
Well, that's a pretty good summary of where you are. And I want to go back to kind of the beginning when you were in residential real estate. What was that like, and what kind of drew you to real estate in the first place?
Yeah, good question. You know, so I was working for a telecommunications company. So AT&T, Lucent Technologies, and Ameritech was the Bell operating company. So I was in telecom and sales, and that was what I did right out of college. And you know, I began then in looking into investments. How do I prepare for retirement? I can max out my 401k, but you know, what do I do with the rest? And how do I, you know, accelerate, either make retirement come sooner or make it better when I get there? And so I bought every book that I could get my hands on how to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and only to find that the greatest investors on the planet and the wealthiest people on the planet had not made their wealth in the stock market. You know, they made it in real estate. And so then I was introduced to Robert Kiyosaki and began down that path. And, you know, by the way, all those books, you know, they said in the very back, they said, oh, by the way, and you can also make money in real estate. Some people invest in real estate. And to me, that just seemed to make more sense. I grew up buying and sometimes just pulling bikes out of the trash and fixing them up and selling to my friends. And then I did it with cars, and I worked at a hardware store. And so I thought, you know, maybe, you know, the skill sets that I have would be good for doing it with houses. You know, I could buy a house and then fix it up and sell it like I did with these, you know, old bicycles that I used to do with my friends and cars. And so that's I felt it was just a good melding, and I was just interested in it. And I think many people are just drawn to real estate. And it's also something tangible. You know, when you buy a stock or a bond or mutual fund, you know, you're sending your money off, you know, in vapor. You never see it. It doesn't leave your hands. It just goes from one account to the next. And then you hope and pray that somebody, the person you never meet, does really good with that company, and therefore your money.
Absolutely.
Whereas with real estate, you know, you can affect that change. You can manufacture the value in it, because you can increase the value by forcing the appreciation, by, you know, rehabbing it, you know, cleaning it up and adding amenities to it, and then adding an income stream, which increases value. And that's something you can see, touch, and feel. And in a stock market crash, you know, your real estate's not going anywhere. The values may go down a little bit with the economy, but it's not going to go to zero like my retirement account almost did when the stock market crashed in 99 and 2000, and then again in 2008. So I said, enough's enough. I want to go the way of a hard asset that produces income. And so that's where virtually all of our investable dollars are.
See, and one thing that I want to, you know, kind of share with everybody is yes, you read books, you know, by many, many phenomenal authors, but you actually took the time to purchase and go through a course. So it wasn't just the books that you relied on. And I think there's too many people out there that, whether they're looking at getting into residential real estate, whether they're looking at getting into self-storage, or whether they're looking at investing in anything or even starting a business, at some point, the best way to move forward and the quickest way and the most secure way is to actually invest in yourself first, which means investing in learning how to do it properly, which is awesome. So what were some of the challenges that you faced? Because we do have a few listeners at different stages. And, you know, some have several residential properties doing different strategies, but what were some of the challenges that you guys faced, maybe in the earlier days, and then maybe towards the end where you had built up this good sized portfolio?
Yeah. You know, I would say in the beginning, it's funding. I mean, you eventually the banks say, all right, now you've got, you know, enough loans, you know, on your balance sheet, and you don't have the liquidity to cover it, even though, you know, it was backed by the real estate. There's a mortgage on each one of those houses. You know, but eventually when they did, you know, what they call a global spread on your portfolio and your personal financial statement, you know, we had a lot of liabilities out there. So the amount of lenders and lending resources that we could go to continued to get smaller, and we have to spread it around. And so working with the community banks and the savings and loans, the ones that would actually, you know, look under the hood of our business and not just look at credit reports, if we walk into a Chase Bank or a Wells Fargo, any loan application for the next house would be, spit out of the back of their machine, with flames on it so fast because
Mhm.
of all the inquiries we had, or just, it didn't pencil out, in their underwriting in their little box. And so we had to dig a little bit deeper to find, the banks that are relationship banks that still conform to relationship banking like the old days of JP Morgan. I mean, the original JP Morgan, the man who walked the face of the earth,
Mhm.
when lending was done on a handshake and a relationship because they actually knew each other. And so that just becomes tougher and tougher, as banks continue to get, really smaller and fewer. And when I say smaller and fewer, there's just, they're all being gobbled up, and it's just tough to find those. And then, at that point in the precipice, when we were getting up to the place where, it was just a hassle with the tenants and toilets, it was really, just keeping up and managing all of it. It became a staffing challenge. It became a market challenge. When we went through the recession here in 2000,
Mhm.
that's when we had most of our apartments in our houses. And then here in the US, the Community Reinvestment Act was put into place. And the goal was to spark the economy again. But what it did is it loosened all the rules that allowed, first-time homebuyers to get into a home for the first time in their lives. And so our tenants did. They were able to, and
Mhm.
they moved out of our houses and our apartments. And we very quickly then had to change our business model. And now we had to rehab these houses again to be able to
Yeah,
sell. So we rehabbed them once for, to get them rent ready, and that's completely different than retail ready. And so then we had to spend the
absolutely.
money again to sell them because our occupancies went down because, anybody who could fog a mirror was able to buy, a house at that time, and who could blame them? So that was a challenge, and pivoting around that until we were finally able to sell out most of those. But then, lo and behold, 8 years later, that Community Reinvestment Act and those loans that were made back then were all defaulting. And we all know, if you've seen the movie The Big Short,
Yep.
that's the story. That's the real deal. And it all started back in 2000 with the Community Reinvestment Act that the wonderful administration here put in place at that time that caused the global crash. And so, it's always those challenges of navigating the economy and the outside forces, even though we can kind of see what's coming down the pike. At the end of the day, we just need to try to, as best as possible, to see how the rules are changing and then adapt it to them, and then apply our game plan on top of it. So those and a number of other, I don't know, hard knocks and lessons along the way, the usual things that we discover as we get into the business. And I guess going back to your point and your question, if I could, for just another second, and that is in storage. When I began to look into self-storage, there wasn't, we have an education company now in self-storage, and there wasn't anybody, there wasn't an organization, there wasn't anybody that we could go to teach how to invest in self-storage, the A to Z, the nuts and bolts, the blocking and tackling. You
Mhm.
could go to the trade shows and maybe read a book or two, but there wasn't a Scott Meyers, and there wasn't a self-storage investing to teach people how to do it. And so that was a challenge. We did have to learn, even though, we've been in real estate and commercial real estate, but learning the self-storage side of the business, there was a little bit of trial and error. And so I guess like any either a good entrepreneur or like any entrepreneur, you see an opportunity in the marketplace, and we filled it and, created an education company. And so, yeah, 100%. Folks, if you think that you can learn about the business by reading a book or two, or downloading some free YouTube videos, that's not enough.
No.
Coming from an educator and also coming from a graduate of the School of Hard Knocks, that's why we created this company, is so people didn't make the mistakes that we did, or lose their shirt or lose their business, because they thought that they knew everything just by pulling down some free information and then going out and haphazardly deploying somebody else's strategy and business plan.
And I think one thing that people take for granted is YouTube. And I think
Mhm.
YouTube has made information and education accessible to everybody for free, which is amazing.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I think for those that really want to get serious about learning about any topic, you do have to invest more than just spending some time on YouTube. So
Mhm.
can you tell us about that journey? Like, obviously you had started investing in
Mhm.
self-storage, were successful. And at what point did you say, hey, I should really start teaching other people
Yeah.
how to do this and how to walk this path? Because you went through what a lot of us go through, are the
Mhm.
ups and downs in residential real estate, dealing with tenants, dealing with all the issues. You're dealing
Mhm.
with obviously economic factors that you had no control over
Mhm.
at the time. So when did you decide to start teaching people?
Yeah. I never set out to really, I guess, decide to do that intentionally, Kurt. And I know you know this story, but I used to run the Central Indiana Real Estate Investor Association. So here in Indianapolis, Indiana, we had about 600 investors. I was the president. And so, people were then seeing the success that we were having in self-storage, and not many people were investing in it. There may not have been anybody else in our group actually at that time investing in it. And so as the president, we do have to educate and we have to teach. And so I decided to hold a workshop on a Saturday. And again, that was not necessarily intentional for teaching people. If I could be quite honest, it's because, I had now 400 people wanting to take me out to lunch to pick my brain and learn about self-storage. And
A lot of lunches.
That's a lot of lunches. And then when some people then, asked me to pay for lunch, then I said, all right, I need to I'll hold a workshop once and teach people how to do it if they want to come and that'll be my contribution to our nonprofit association. Well, then along the way, we had speakers come to our group, national speakers that had home study courses and live events that they would sell those home study courses and tickets to their live events. And that's how, most of these real estate groups are funded by way of splitting those sales when they bring in these speakers that teach on a topic, because they're the experts, they're the gurus. And then they have some resources to provide that's, and if they sell those, then a portion of that, a percentage of that goes back to the group. Well, being the president, I wrote those checks to those speakers that came in, and I saw what that looked like. And at the same time, I worked with the agents around the country, really only one or two at the time. And they said, hey, I understand that you're doing self-storage stuff. And we've had a lot of groups around the country that want to learn about this and have a speaker, and I don't have one. If you'd be open to it, I'd help you write a course and write out a presentation and, assemble it and put you out on the road. And I thought, well, that'd be fun. Maybe I could get one or two of those checks and take the kids on a nice vacation and see what that's like. And then it just took off, Kurt. I found myself now traveling a lot, being in demand. And then people wanted to have a 3-day event, an academy that just seems to the natural progression in the education industry and business. And so, we only do things with excellence. And so we created an excellent 3-day event. And it's a workshop that teaches people how to get into the business. And then folks wanted to then have coaching and mentoring alongside of that. And again, to your point, going back to YouTube, there's a lot of good content out there that you can download, but there's a vast difference between that and an organization or getting, thoughtful, customized mentoring from somebody walking alongside of you that knows exactly, your situation, your goals, your ambitions, your resources, and then can piece everything together to help you achieve those goals. And so we didn't set out to just have a coaching business to just tell people, here's what you go do, good luck. But if we were going to do it, then we were going to mentor them and come alongside of them to make sure that they're successful, but then also put us in a position where sometime in the future, we may be able to partner with them. If we feed into them, and teach them, and there's true transformation, not just throwing information at them, but true transformation in their business, then we know that they'd be a part of our community and we would all move together forward at some point in the future. So that is kind of the genesis. There was a need in the industry that we sought, a need for me to stop going to all those lunches and to find a better way, but then also an opportunity to be able to, increase our deal flow and to be able to give back at the same time. And then a chance meeting by Dave Ramsey in his event here, where he said, hey, you need to go out and teach people this so they don't end up at my radio show and end up almost going bankrupt like you and I both did. And so that was probably what pushed me over the edge when I went home and told my wife and after that event. And when Dave Ramsey tells you need to go do something, then by God, you better do it.
Absolutely. And so for those people that don't know a lot about what it means to invest in self-storage, everybody's familiar, you're driving on the highway, you see a facility. What does it mean to invest in self-storage? Like, what strategies are you looking for? Is it more similar to buying and holding, increasing value? You mentioned development. Are there other strategies that people can look at in self-storage? And what do most of your students kind of start out with?
Yeah. It's certainly not a one size fits all, but the beauty of storage is that if you're looking to grow a portfolio, and I have to be careful when I say passive, passive cash flow, because if you're an active real estate investor, there's nothing passive about it. Don't let anybody or any guru tell you otherwise. It's not mailbox money. That's a hobby. This is not a hobby. This is a full contact sport. And you need to walk the four corners of your business if you're going to own real estate, or you're going to find out pretty soon the bank's going to own your real estate. So starting out, it is a fantastic business to get into if you're migrating and gravitating from single family homes to get into commercial real estate, because it isn't that management intensive. As a matter of fact, you're going almost going backwards a little bit in terms of the details and intricacies of the business itself. We're renting out units. They're metal boxes on concrete slabs. We don't have to deal with all the tenant issues and the rehabs and the contractors and the babysitting from a property manager. So our sweet spot for ourselves and our students starting out are usually facilities that are around 20,000 square feet, maybe 15,000 square feet. They're in secondary and tertiary markets, and they can be run with a kiosk or with a part-time manager on site. If you have somebody that's out there full-time, you're overpaying, and a smaller facility where you're trying to either make technology work from a cost standpoint or an employee, they're a little bit difficult to do. It can be done, but that sweet spot is getting up to that place where you've got, say 150 units and about 20,000 square feet. So you have some options, a part-time person and or a kiosk, and it can be run unmanned. And so from that standpoint, if you are the one walking the four corners of your business and keeping an eye on it and spending time there several times a week, the business can not run on its own or by itself, but run without a whole lot of hand holding and, hands-on, day in, day out management of that asset. That is the beauty of this asset class in comparison to single family homes and definitely apartments or mobile home parks or assisted living or, retail or any of the other asset classes. So I think that's where people start out.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you begin to amass more facilities, hopefully in that same geographical area, then you can add another layer, like a district manager or a regional manager that oversees and directs the marketing efforts of all of them. And you get that economies of scale, one website, marketing efforts for all those facilities, but only paid once, sharing of staff. And then as you roll those up, the big race right now in our industry is to consolidate and to sell off to the bigger fish. So if you buy a whole bunch of these mom and pop facilities and all of a sudden you've got a group of them that are all running, that are turnkey in that city, all branded the same property management software and systems and, security and everything else, it's a turnkey, then somebody else is going to come along as they always do, and they will pay you a premium for a portfolio of facilities that are run very well and have high occupancy, and that somebody doesn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting on. And that is, at all levels of the chain, that's what the REITs, the real estate investment trusts, are doing. They're developing new ones, but they're also gobbling up portfolios so they can come into a market or fill in the gaps in an existing market and buy up their competitor's portfolio so that then they can do their best to try to dominate that market. So that's, I don't know if that answers your questions, but that's kind of what it looks like across the different levels in a market in our industry.
Yeah, so it does. And I guess the main strategy for somebody starting out is to get to that point where, a REIT might look at your portfolio, or maybe another investor might look at your portfolio. And that way, over, I don't know, maybe 5-year time span where you're able to, generate some cash flow over that time, increase the value, and then sell. Is that kind of the main strategy?
It could be the main strategy. I can't say what that is for everybody. The main strategy for one person, Kurt, could be that they just want to have one facility, and after 15 years pay it off, and they enjoy $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 of income coming in, per month, and it adds to what they're already doing or their job or their retirement or whatever. They don't have to grow and scale it, but it's all across the board. But, we found that I think when you watch that money and continue to reinvest, you buy, create value after 5 years, and then you sell, you pull that equity back and you leverage it again. That's the beauty of self-storage, or that's the beauty of real estate, is that you can leverage it, and then you go double down. You buy a bigger portfolio or more facilities, you create that value, and you do it again. So that money only stays, you only put that money to bed for a short amount of time. And as long as you're doing it right, you know how to create value, in an industry or in self-storage, then, why wouldn't you continue to replicate that? And then, when you get to be somebody maybe twice my age, then you decide to slow down and enjoy the last handful of properties that you own free and clear, I suppose.
So what we're talking about really helps kind of the person that's new, just maybe looking at self-storage for the first time, or has done maybe one deal and like, okay, where do I go next? But I also know that you have a mastermind, which is more of a high level group of self-storage investors. So what are you seeing right now trend wise within that group at a higher level? So people that have kind of graduated from, maybe the smaller facilities into some other things within self-storage.
Yeah, well, that is where, that strategy is deployed. So once you get that first one under your belt, then you're a player in the industry, and the lenders recognize it, the vendors do, the brokers do, and the second, the third, the fourth, typically comes pretty quickly after that, just like other asset classes. Once you're a player in the industry and you've done it, then all of a sudden you're a known quantity, and it doesn't necessarily open up the floodgates, but it gets you a seat at the table. And so at that point, then yes, in our mastermind, those are the folks that there are requirements. You have to be in self-storage to be in the room. But yeah, the folks in there are, at different levels and at different speeds, growing and scaling a portfolio of self-storage facilities. And sometimes they're just growing to be better. They just want to be better operators, and they have maybe no desire to buy any more facilities this year, or maybe one, and they just want to get better at what they're doing, and they want to grow their income, and they want to grow the ancillary income streams and the businesses within that business. And they want to find different ways to reduce their expenses on a mass scale, depending on the size of their portfolio. So those are the higher level strategies and best business practices that we're sharing amongst the group. And then also it's a confidential group of folks that are doing business life together. I mean, our folks have been there for 7 years, 8 years, and they can bring their problems to the mastermind that they can't take to their spouse or their business partner, because sometimes their spouse is their business partner, and if they need to fire their business partner, they can't talk to that.
Not a good conversation.
But they can have that at the mastermind, or staffing issues, or other investments, or if they got a scoundrel that they're dealing with in the industry, as anybody else had experience, just those confidential conversations you can't have when you're either at home and you're a smaller business, or even in an organization with 5 or 6 folks that are at the same level. If you're looking to oust one of them, or there's issues, you need a sounding board. You can't do it at home. That's what the mastermind's for.
So if somebody were in that position where they've done, a facility or two, and they were, wanting to reach out and apply, because as you mentioned, there's an application process, where could they go to do that?
Yeah, thestoragemastermind.com. It tells our story as to who we are, what we're all about. And if that sounds of interest, first of all, we would love to have you. We are growing this community of rock stars that we are going out and deploying our strategies and buying together as a group and investing together and learning together. We would love to have you a part of it. 2023 is going to be a big year for growing our mastermind. So thestoragemastermind.com. Go check us out if that sounds of interest to you, because we would love to have you a part of it.
Awesome. And as we talk about 2023, I know you've mentioned this, before. I've heard on your podcast, as well as when you've been a guest on other podcasts, talking about the looming recession. Yeah. And, by all accounts, we're here. So is your strategy changing, or are you talking about, talking with the mastermind about changing, pivoting somewhat this year?
I'm not so sure it's a pivot as much as it's we're going to open the floodgates. We've been waiting for this. We've been poised to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be created in this market, and the gift that's going to be given to us. And that means that not to take advantage of people, but there's going to be strained partnerships. Every recession brings its own host of problems, and this one will be very similar to all the rest and very different than others. But what we do know as a constant is that money is tightening. It's getting more expensive. That puts a strain on projects when it comes time to refinance. The lenders they're doing things a little bit different these days. Interest rates are twice as high as they used to be, back just a year ago. And projects that were purchased, self-storage facility projects that were purchased at a 90% LTV and a 4% interest rate, are now going to be refinanced, 2, 3, 4 years later at maybe a 65 or 70% LTV and an 8% interest rate. And that doesn't always pencil out. And the lender may not refinance it, or they may not find a lender to refinance it, especially if that self-storage owner operator did not create enough value and enough cushion to be able to refinance it at a lower loan to value. And so in that instance, they're going to have to sell their facility, or they may get caught by not having a plan B, and they may have to come to the closing table for that refinance with the keys, because or cash, or both. And so we're going to see some short sales. We're going to see some banks that maybe taking some of these back and doing their own short sales and into receivership. And that is what prompted us the last time in 2008. We did pretty well. We saw what was going on. But we learned more from what was going on by watching the bigger players that had cash and that had good, solid lending relationships, and they clean house. And so we said, we're not going to put ourselves in this position again, and we are going to once again go forward and create as many lending relationships as possible and stay in good standing with them, and then also grow our private equity portfolio and the lenders that we can go, our private equity lenders and borrowers and partners that we can go to, so that when there is blood in the streets, that we can come along and help some of these folks. We can do joint ventures, partnerships, and then the occasional acquisitions. We'll see developments that are going to be strained, and conversions, and all along the way, there's going to be partnerships that are strained. They've got something going on over here that the recession is causing issues and their hair's on fire, and they have to sell out of their partnership. Well, the other partner doesn't want to sell. That creates an opportunity for us as well. So we know that there's a lot of scenarios in which we'll be able to pick up properties and projects, because more will be coming down the pike as we get deeper into the recession, and we're just poised to take advantage of it. So yes, those conversations are had at the mastermind and at all levels of our organization.
So if somebody wants to get into self-storage, but let's say they'd rather do it from a passive standpoint, is there a way that you mentioned private equity as part of what you do and what you have to offer? Is there a way that people can contact or find out more if they're interested in investing passively with you?
Of course, Kurt, and glad you asked. Yes, passivestorageinvesting.com. That is our financial services arm. So anybody that's looking to get into self-storage, because the folks that do invest with us, you become a partner. You get a share of the deal, which means you get a K1. So you have ownership. So you get to write off the depreciation of that asset that you invest in, just like we do. You just have a fractional ownership in it, but you don't take on the credit risk or the development risk or lease up risk. We take all that on, and you get to come along and learn about it as well as profit from it. And over the past 15 years, our investors have received a 34% return on their investment with us. And so we take typically we take unaccredited investors in some of our projects, accredited in others. But if you head over to the site, then you can see just exactly what we offer, how you can get involved and work with us and invest alongside of us. We'd love to have you come alongside, because it's going to be an incredible year.
Awesome. So final question for you. What advice would you give to somebody that wants to get into self-storage in 2023 for the first time?
I'd say blanket advice for anybody, which is probably echoing what you're saying, Kurt, which is, if not now, when? Don't sit on the sidelines. If you're looking to invest in anything, we know more millionaires were created in real estate than any other time in history during the recessions, each and every time, and business owners and entrepreneurs. So when everybody else is running out is when you should be running in, and make sure you're educated. Make sure you're getting educated in the proper way. And if you're still a little uncomfortable, I suggest that everybody not only gets a mentor, but you should partner with somebody. Look to partner with folks that have walked through all the traps and all the pitfalls. Partner with somebody on your first project, no matter what asset class you're getting involved in, and then springboard into doing it on your own. So just caution. You don't want to lose the battle, which for some people, as we mentioned before, Kurt, you lose the war. If you make a bad deal and you go bankrupt, man, that's a long time before you dig yourself out of that hole and live to fight another day. So do it right the first time. Go slow. Slow and steady wins the race, and learn about the asset class, whether it's self-storage or otherwise. Get good mentors and grab a partner if you can to do it alongside of from the get-go.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Scott, for being here on Logger and Listings. And for those of you that are looking to start out investing in self-storage and want to do it yourself, go to selfstorageinvesting.com, where Scott and his team will be there to support, educate, and inspire you to grow your own portfolio. So again, thank you very much, Scott. It was great getting to catch up, and looking forward to hearing more of your journey this year.
My pleasure, Kurt. Thanks so much for having me. Good to see you again.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Logger and Listings podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to leave a like, comment, or even better yet, share it with other aspiring investors and entrepreneurs. Your support helps this podcast grow organically, and in turn, helps other investors and entrepreneurs grow their businesses and have fun along the way. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.